Welcome to Bits and Pieces Quilting. Today we are going to make a bonus project from some offcuts of a previous project. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Michelle, and a few weeks ago I released a video on the Four Patch Trellis quilt. It's a scrap busting quilt, but it also uses the sew and flip method to create some offcuts. And if you know me, you know I love those offcuts and turning them into something. So I promised a bonus project. I was a little late because I hoped to finish it with that video, but it's done now. And so this is the bonus project. It's a table runner that uses 50 of your 72 bonus hourglass blocks and turns it into a table runner. It's a really versatile pattern, and I'll have that pattern for you on my website at www.bitsandpiecesquilting.com. I've used 50, but you can easily scale this up to use 60 or even 70 of your bonus blocks. So it's small, but it is beautiful. So let's dive in and I'll show you how to make it. These are the leftover bits and pieces from the Four Patch Trellis quilt. And I hope you made that project. I'll put a photo in here of the final quilt top from the Four Patch Trellis project and a link in the description down below for that video if you haven't seen it yet. These are my leftover bits and pieces that I cut off from the sew and flip method, sewed them together into the hourglass units, and then squared them up to 2 inches. And I hope you did the same thing. If you did, you'll have 72 of these. And in that video, I had hoped to have the bonus project ready for you, but ran out of time. So this is the bonus project for the Four Patch Trellis quilt. There's 72 of these. I've designed a table runner, and the table runner I'm going to make uses 50, but you could easily scale this up to use 60 or even 70 of these 72 units. I'll put a little photo in here of the table runner we're going to make. This is just in my quilt design software program, and it's a little bit wild because of the colors I've used, but depending on the colors you've used, you can make this look any way you like, really. So we've got the light and the dark from our hourglass units. You're going to need a tiny bit more of both, of the light and the dark. And the pattern that you can get from my website at www.bitsandpiecesquilting.com will give you all the exact amounts that you're going to need. And then you're going to need an accent fabric. And I have chosen this absolutely beautiful Australian Indigenous print fabric. I think it's just gorgeous. And I think it's going to really highlight these simple black, almost dark gray and off-white blocks. I think are going to just let this really shine. So I think that's going to look super cool. So normally when you put an hourglass block together, you very often put them together so that you get light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. But we are going to throw that out the window a little bit and do something a little bit different today. So that's sort of a normal setting for these kinds of hourglass blocks, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, all the way around. We're going to throw that out the window and we're going to put like colors together into almost like a little checkerboard on point. So this starts with 3 blocks across, 1 block up here, and another block here. So we're going to use 5 of these in every block. And we're essentially going to make a 9 patch. And then we're going to put our 9 patches together and put a bit of a pieced border around it to get the final effect. So let me show you what that's going to look like. And that's this little block right here. I think it almost looks like a tile floor with some really cool corners on it. So let me show you. We're going to need to make 9 of these for the project that I've designed. Sorry, these are 9 patch blocks. We need to make 10 of these, 5 of these squares in each one, so 50 of your bonus pieces. So let me show you how to do that. We already have block number 1 made, which are these hourglass blocks. The second block are these corner pieces, and these start with a 3-inch square of the background and a 3-inch square of the dark fabric, a diagonal line down the center, and then we'll cut that in half. We're essentially just making some half square triangles out of these. So I have done that stitching already. I'm just going to cut this in half along that drawn line, and now we have 2 half square triangles. And if you know me at all, you know I'm going to press those seams open. And then once I do that, I end up with these. Exact same thing, seams pressed open. The next step is to then bring in our accent fabric. And we're going to add, and I've drawn a diagonal line. You probably can't see it on camera. I've drawn a diagonal line down both of these accent pieces. And I'm going to put this half square triangle onto an accent piece. And I want to make sure that my diagonal lines go in opposite directions. Can you see that? If you imagine I've sewn that already, when you peel this back, you'll see that I'm going to get this really interesting corner unit. And we need to make 2 of these for this. So I'm going to line these up. And now I've put into the instructions just to cut all of these pieces at 3 inches. You could cut these accent pieces to 2 3/4, but that just seems really fussy to me. So, and we're going to square it all up anyway. So just eyeball that in the center. And remember that this diagonal and the pencil drawn diagonal are crisscross. Same thing here. I want to make sure that my drawn diagonal is in the opposite orientation from this diagonal. I'm going to center these up, and then I'm going to take them over to the machine, and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. So these are my 2 pieces. I've cut this one in half already and taken it over to the iron and pressed it, but it's just a matter of going down that drawn line. And then when you open these up, you get the blocks that we're looking for. I took the other one over to the iron, and I pressed the seams open, and that's what we've got here. Press those seams open, and then the other pieces, I'll do those in a moment. Now, interestingly and importantly, these are mirror images of each other. So each of these squares that you cut apart gives you these mirror images. And that's exactly what we need. So you need to square these up. You need to square them up to 2 inches square. And I am going to use my ruler. I'm going to use the diagonal line and the 1x1 intersection point to make sure that I line that up. The diagonal line between the dark and the light square and the 1x1 centered perfectly on that center spot. And then just give this a little trim across both sides. Flip it over, line up that 1x1 right in the middle, line up that 45-degree line, and give it a slice. So that is one of the corner units. And if I do that quickly with the other one, then I can, turn it, there we go. So we can use the 45-degree line just to make sure that everything is nicely squared. And so the 2 half square triangles that I'm making here as my little demo, you need both of these to finish one block. Because once I finish squaring these up, they are, as I said, mirror images of each other. So if we pull in the start of our 9 patch, this will go here, and this one will go here. And then once I press and square these ones, they will fill in the rest of my block, like that. And then you'll end up with this block right here. So I need to go and make 10 of those, but let me show you also quickly how we are going to make the finishing pieces. So the finishing pieces, the way that I've laid this out, we are going to need finishing pieces for here and for here, because as you put your blocks together, they finish each other. There's no sashing in this project, so these will all finish each other across. But around the edges, we want to make these units. This is 2 pieces of the accent color with the dark, and those get tucked onto here. And then we also need to make this same kind of unit with the light, and those will get tucked onto the top just to finish these squares and just to complete the effect of that checkerboard. So to make these blocks, you start with your dark fabric and with your accent fabric, and you sew on both sides of a drawn diagonal line. So again, you probably can't see it, but I have the diagonal line drawn down the center of this accent fabric. And I thought I had sewn both seams, but it looks like I've only sewn on one side. So I'm going to run over to the machine and finish that. I've also done the background fabric with the accent fabric. And I've drawn the line down the center here and sewn a 1/4 inch on both sides. So let me finish this one and I'll come back. All right, we're back. Again, I'm going to just cut on that diagonal line to make these half square triangles and variations on a theme here. As you can imagine, the next step is to pop over to the iron and I'm going to press these seams open. They're just half square triangles with the background and the accent and the dark fabric and the accent. And so just like in the previous blocks, we are going to take these half square triangles and pair them up with another accent fabric with the line drawn diagonally. Same as the previous step, we want to make sure the diagonal goes in the opposing direction to the one that we've already got. Again, so that when you peel this back along your seam line, you end up with a block that has 2 parts of the back of the accent and 1 part of the background. Or in this case, with the dark and the back and the accent, we want to make sure that the line, same thing, goes in the opposite direction from the half square triangle so that when you peel that back, you get that unit. So I'm going to run and sew those 1/4 inch seams along either side of these and be right back. So with the seams sewn, I can just take my ruler and rotary cutter and give these a quick slice. Now, unlike the blocks we just made, these ones are not mirror images. These ones are exactly the same, just because you're only dealing with 2 colors. So you, from one half square triangle like this, you get 2, and then when you add that 3rd piece of fabric, you end up getting 4 of the exact same blocks. So I will press these open as well, press the seams open on these, square them up, and they will become part of the border units to help us finish this project. So I have a little bit of sewing to do to get my blocks made and to make the finishing pieces according to the instructions in the pattern. Once all of that is done, we will meet back here and I'll show you how to assemble this table runner. These are my 10 9-patch blocks, and I've just laid them out here on my table. I've taken the cutting mats off just to give a bit more contrast, so hopefully it's a little clearer on the video. But these are my 10 9-patch blocks that we made from 5 hourglass blocks, as well as 4 of these interesting double half square triangle blocks that we've made. And so 10 of these makes up the center of the table runner. Now you can make 12 of them and use 60 of your hourglass blocks. You can even make 14 of them and use 70 of your hourglass blocks. That's just going to make your table runner a little bit longer. But I'm happy with this size. This could go on the top of a coffee table in the living room. This could go on the top of a dresser in a bedroom. It's a little small for my dining table, but I think it is still going to look super cool. I love the tile floor effect that these hourglass blocks give in the middle. But to finish them, I really don't like these unfinished triangles here. I really want them to be the squares, and that's where these blocks come in. And we put 10 of those, 1 for each block, on the top and bottom of this table runner like this. And then I have 4 with the dark here, and these ones go on to the end like this to finish off all of these unfinished squares across the table runner. And then we're also going to need just a couple of 2-inch squares. I have those cut here as well. Those 2-inch squares are going to go on the short sides at the top and bottom, here and here. And all of this is going to be in the pattern. So just follow along and you'll be able to finish this really easily. And then we have these bricks. These are 2 by 3.5, and they fill in all these gaps here around the final project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to sew my 2 rows of these squares, of these 10 9-patch blocks. I'm going to sew these 2 rows together. I'm going to piece my short side borders and I'm going to piece my long side borders, and I'll show you the result of all of that before we then sew the final pieces together for this table runner. I've sewn my center 2 rows together and I think it's looking excellent. You can see on the back it's pretty dramatic because I've pressed all my seams open. But it's looking nice and flat and it's come together really nicely. There's a few spots that maybe don't match up quite as tightly as I'd like them to, but you know what? For a bonus project, I think it's going to be just fine. Then I have my side borders, these pieces here. It's a little hard to see the contrast with the gray and the accent fabric, but those will finish off the squares on these sides like this. I'm not sure if that's centered. And then I have the top and bottom border pieces, and these will really nicely finish off the squares along these edges as well. So I'm going to go now and sew the side borders, give those a press, sew the top and bottom borders, and this project is going to be finished. As I mentioned earlier, you could add another wider border onto this just to frame it up if you wanted. There's a lot of possibility here. We also talked about adding some blocks in this direction to use up some of the other hourglass blocks, but I'm really happy with this tiny little table runner. And so this is the finished table runner. I think it looks really, really cute, and it's a great way to use these leftover hourglass blocks. There are a lot of pieces in this little project. The final size will be in the pattern, but I think it's about 25.5 by 12 or 12.5 inches. So not large, but I think super cute and really dramatic. I love the way that these look like tiles that have been laid into a beautiful mosaic floor. I'm really keen to finish this. I will quilt it up, put a nice binding on it that matches this outer edge here, and I think it's gonna look super cute. As I mentioned, thanks very much for watching this video on the bonus project with the bonus hourglass blocks from the Four Patch Trellis quilt. I hope you enjoyed it. These blocks are totally worth saving, and there are lots of other options for how you can use those hourglass blocks on my website at www.bitsandpiecesquilting.com. There is the Stars on Parade quilt, there's the Square Dance quilt, and I'm sure that there's other things that you can come up with to use your hourglass blocks. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to make the most of your fabric bits and pieces.